Hello and welcome to another edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Right off the bat on today's show, the in-performance group inside of Hyundai, the performance versions of a lot of their machines, has actually been selling like gangbusters everywhere around the world. Now sadly here in the United States we're only going to get one version of the in-performance group, and that's going to be the Hyundai Veloster, which actually isn't going to come out till later this year. But everywhere else around the world this seems to be such a big hit. And a nice little sit down with the folks over at Automotive News, the chief engineer inside of the group, one Albert Binman, actually came out and said that an EV version of an in-performance car is definitely in the works and is something they're very excited about, even though he said it's possibly a pretty good chunk away as far as its actual debut. But it could be a very cool little performance version inside of the Hyundai group of an EV. Next up on the list, well, have you ever wanted to live out your inner Sean Connery fantasies? That actually sounded kind of dirty. Sorry about that. But you also want to live out some of your James Bond fantasies as well, using a DB5 Aston Martin with all the little gadgets. Well, the folks over at Aston Martin are working on these as we speak in their continuation series. They're going to build a select group of Aston Martin DB5 James Bond edition vehicles, and this thing's going to have everything you would ever want, all the gadgets, all the cool stuff inside of it, where you can really live out those 007 fantasies. Now there's a handful of problems. Number one, it's going to be very, very rare. Only 25 are going to be built for the world. The other problem is $3.5 million is what it's going to cost you for one of these vehicles, so it's not cheap in any way, shape, or form. And then the biggest problem, at least to me, it's not street legal anywhere around the world. So you can't actually drive this thing on the street, even though I'm thinking a lot of people may end up anyway. So apparently what you're going to have to do is buy one of these cars and have it be the big centerpiece of a big James Bond watch party where you can binge a bunch of 007 films all at once. So I guess that's pretty much all you can do with it, but it's still a pretty doggone cool little situation. Next up on the list, we're all anxiously awaiting a lot of the performance numbers coming out of the Aston Martin / Red Bull Racing Valkyrie. And apparently over the past several days, according to the folks over at Road and Track on Twitter, the folks over at Cosworth that are actually building the power plant for this deal may have let the performance numbers slip out when they made the announcement that they made a record-breaking, normally aspirated 6.5 liter V12 for Aston Martin and Red Bull, making a total horsepower up of 1,130 brake horsepower, which is hugely impressive with no forced induction. So now the trick is that it was very quickly taken down. It might have only been up for an hour or two on Twitter, so apparently this thing may hit a little bit closer to home, and possibly somebody might have got yelled at over at Cosworth for bragging about this maybe a tad bit too soon before it's actually been released. So we'll definitely keep you in tune of when more official information comes out on this vehicle. Next up on the list, well, we're rapidly inside of the Monterey Car Week out in California. There's going to be a bunch of cool stuff, a lot of car auctions, a lot of really cool Concours d'Elegance type events. Also, a lot of vehicles are going to debut. One of those coming from Bugatti, which is going to give us the brand new Chiron Divo. Divo is actually a callback to their famed racing driver from way back in the day, and that's really what this car is going to be all about, with tons of aero modification. This is going to be the most track-focused Bugatti Chiron on the planet. Now there's a couple little tricks in this deal, as much like that Aston Martin is. They're only going to build 40 of these machines. Also, it's 5 million euros for this machine, or 5.75 million US dollars, which is not cheap in any way, shape, or form. Now, hopefully we're going to hear a whole lot more over the next several days about this brand new Bugatti Veyron, or I should say Chiron Divo. And then, next up on the list, we're going to talk about the old Ford GT. It's been out for a couple of years, but an interesting little situation. If you want to check it out over on the Facebook page, there's a link over there where you can check out the video of one of these pounding around the Nürburgring Nordschleife circuit, looking like it's possibly going on a record run. Now, there's a couple little tricks. The folks over at Road and Track actually noticed that the number plate on the vehicle was the very same number plate of the vehicle that Ford had at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Ford Motor Company brought this particular vehicle. Also, it is running in an industry pool section of the racing facility, meaning they carve out a section of time for manufacturers to do testing on these machines. Now, Ford has come out and vehemently said that they will never go after track records, but if Ford Motor Company is actually working on this car at the Nordschleife Loop, could they be going for a lap record? Would love to see what the old Ford GT could do around that particular circuit, and we'll definitely keep you in tune if we hear more about this deal. And last up on the list, probably a most interesting story, at least maybe, is Formula E. You've probably seen this particular series. It's been around for 4 years. In fact, they're rapidly approaching their 5th season, which will be firing off on December 15th of 2018 in Saudi Arabia. The trick is with this 5th round of this series, or 5th championship, is they're blue sky thinking completely new automobiles that's going to be hitting the racetrack, which means upwards of 40 of these last generation or current generation Formula E vehicles are actually going to be offered up for sale from the different teams. Now, the goofy thing is they're thinking these cars are going to sell for somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000, which I think is actually a little bit presumptuous, at least as far as I'm concerned. That being said, too, they claim that there's a real market for these machines, but boy, I mean, honestly, if you show up with one of these at a track day, you are really going to gather some attention in this particular vehicle. So that could be pretty cool. And then honestly, you know, with them not being road legal, only 40 units, and they could be sold anywhere around the world not being road legal. So it'd be interesting to see just how many people actually raise their hand to buy one of these particular machines. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. Sorry about the neighbor at Old Motor Cars HQ mowing the grass. If you like us over on the Facebook page, we'd appreciate it. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can do so at any time. Get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon.